Alex had a small apartment, a steady job, a bed he could come home to, and a life that was, honestly, pretty normal. Every morning, he made his coffee. Nothing special, nothing dramatic, just another morning in a life that was slowly moving forward. He went to work, he paid his bills, he came home, and most days, he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Alex wasn't sitting around waiting for his life to change. He was working, he was trying, and whenever he had the time, he tried to learn something new. Sometimes, he even made progress. A task finished, a problem solved, a small thing crossed off the list. Nothing that would impress the internet, but it mattered to him. At least, it used to. After work, Alex would walk home with groceries in his hands. The same streets, the same buildings, the same quiet routine. And for a while, that routine felt enough. He had a place to come back to. Food in the kitchen. A bed waiting for him. A few things he had bought with his own money. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was his. And Alex was still trying to improve it. At night, he studied. He learned. He made plans. He told himself that eventually, all this effort would lead somewhere. Some nights, he actually felt like he was getting somewhere. Not far, not fast, but somewhere. And maybe that should have been enough for the night. So he went to bed, tired but peaceful, because tomorrow he would try again. Then one morning, before he had even fully woken up, Alex reached for his phone. The first thing he saw was a house, huge windows, a perfect kitchen, a view that looked like it belonged in a movie. Alex stared at it for a second. Then he looked around his room. His apartment suddenly looked smaller. Not because anything had changed. The walls were the same. The furniture was the same. But somehow, it felt different now. On the way to work, he saw someone his age standing beside an expensive car. A few seconds later, Alex looked down at his own life, and for the first time that morning, it felt like he was already behind. At work, he tried to focus, but during his break, he checked his phone again. Someone had built a business. Someone had reached a goal. Someone had apparently figured everything out. And Alex was sitting at his desk. Then he saw someone traveling. A beautiful place. A life that looked completely free. Alex looked around the office. The same walls. The same desk. The same afternoon. And suddenly, his normal life felt like a problem. That evening, he looked at his calendar. Work, bills, the usual things. Nothing was wrong with his life. But now, it looked painfully ordinary. He tried to study that night, but the unfinished project in front of him suddenly felt embarrassing. Because somewhere, someone else was already doing more, moving faster, going further, and Alex was still here. That was when something strange started happening. Alex began looking at his own life through the eyes of everyone else. His apartment, his car, his work, his body, his progress. Everything became something to compare. And the more he looked, the less he seemed to have. Not because he had lost anything, but because there was always someone who appeared to have more. One night, while looking through an old drawer, Alex found something he hadn't seen in years. An old phone, worn out, slow, almost useless by today's standards. He held it in his hands and suddenly remembered a different version of himself. He found an old photo. Alex was younger. His life was simpler. He had less money, less comfort, less of almost everything. But there he was, smiling. Alex looked at the picture. Then he looked at himself. The younger version of him had less and somehow looked happier. The current version had more and looked like he was losing. Alex slowly looked around his apartment. The laptop, the books, the bed, the kitchen, the things he had worked for, things that once felt impossible, were now just part of the background. And that was the strange part. Alex had more than he used to dream of. So why did he still feel like he had nothing? Alex decided he needed to do more. Maybe that was the answer. Work harder, learn faster, make more money, build something on the side. So he opened a notebook and started writing down everything he wanted. At first, it felt exciting. Then the hours got later. One more task, one more lesson, one more thing to finish. Alex kept telling himself he would rest after he got ahead. The problem was, he never really got ahead. The next morning, he was exhausted at work. But instead of slowing down, he simply added another coffee and kept going. Soon, the list became bigger than Alex. More goals, more plans, more things he was supposed to become. He had so many directions to go that even standing still started to feel like failure. After work, he continued. He had a project, a skill he wanted to learn, a future he wanted to build. But every night, he felt like he was starting from behind. Sometimes he actually finished something, a small step, a completed task, a little progress. But before he could enjoy it, he was already looking at the next thing. Then, there were the things he wanted. The better car, the nicer apartment, the things that seemed to represent finally making it. Alex didn't want everything. He just wanted to stop feeling behind. So he looked at the numbers, his income, his savings, his expenses, and then he looked at what other people seemed to be achieving. The distance between the two felt enormous. Even dinner became another opportunity to think about what he hadn't done. He was physically sitting at the table, but mentally, he was somewhere else, always planning the next move, always trying to catch up. Everywhere Alex went, there was another reminder, someone driving something better, someone advertising success, someone talking about their next achievement. The city didn't say anything to him, but somehow he kept hearing the same message. You should be further ahead. Even when he was surrounded by ordinary people, Alex wondered how he was doing compared to them. Who was moving faster? Who was more successful? Who had figured life out? He didn't know the answers, but he kept asking the questions. When he came home, he saw evidence of his own effort everywhere. The books he had studied, the laptop he had worked for, the things he had slowly built. But instead of feeling proud, he only saw what was missing. Then he opened the old notebook. The pages were worn. The handwriting was younger. The goals were smaller. Alex read through the old list, and one goal stopped him. Something simple, something he had once wanted more than anything. He stared at it for a long time, because he had already done it. Alex walked through his apartment, and suddenly, the things around him started telling a different story. Not a perfect story, not an impressive story, but a story of progress. He stood by the window that night. His phone was still in his hand, but for once, he wasn't looking at it. He just stood there, thinking. Then he placed the phone face down. Not forever, not dramatically. He simply put it down. The next morning, Alex made his coffee, got ready for work, and followed the same routine. Nothing magical had happened overnight. He was still Alex. At work, he finished a task. And this time, he paused for a second. He looked at what he had done. It wasn't a life-changing achievement, but it was done. And for once, he let that be enough. On the way home, the city looked the same buildings, the same streets, the same traffic. But Alex noticed the evening light. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe he had just stopped looking. When he walked into his apartment, he didn't immediately reach for his phone. He noticed the room, the books, the desk, the small things he had collected over the years, things he had once wanted. Of course, the feeling didn't disappear. That night, Alex picked up his phone again, and there it was, someone else celebrating another achievement. For a moment, Alex felt the old feeling return, that familiar thought, that quiet pressure, that uncomfortable question. What am I doing with my life? But this time, Alex didn't try to answer it immediately. He placed the phone down and went back to his project. It was still unfinished, still small, still his. And maybe that was the difference. Alex wasn't suddenly satisfied with everything. He hadn't become a different person. He was simply starting to notice his own life again. But noticing the problem didn't make it disappear. Alex still wanted more. So he kept working. Late nights, early mornings, one project after another. He tried to do everything at once. Learn something new. Build something new. Improve his finances. Improve himself. The more he tried to change, the less time he had to actually live. During the day, he worked his regular job. During his breaks, he worked on his other plans. Every spare minute had to become productive. Even rest started to feel like wasted time. By the time Alex left work, most people were going home. Alex was only halfway through his day. He carried his bag, his laptop, and the constant feeling that he wasn't doing enough. When he got home, his bed was right there. The apartment was quiet, comfortable, safe. But Alex walked straight past it. He had work to do. The hours passed. 8 o'clock, 10, midnight. The room grew darker. The desk lamp stayed on. And Alex kept working, because maybe the next hour would finally be the hour he caught. Eventually, he finished something, a small piece of the project, a tiny step forward. Alex leaned back. For a second, he felt relief. Then, the feeling disappeared. Almost immediately. No excitement, no celebration. Just another finished task, waiting to be replaced by another one. Alex sat on the edge of his bed. He had worked all day, then worked all night, and somehow he still felt like he had done nothing. So he reached for his phone. Maybe he needed a break. Maybe he just wanted to see what was happening. Maybe he was looking for a reason to feel better. Instead, he saw someone standing in front of a house Alex could probably never afford. Alex stared at the screen, then at his own room, and that old feeling returned. He kept scrolling. More success, more achievements, more lives that seemed to be moving faster than his. And suddenly, the small thing Alex had just finished didn't feel like anything at all. He lowered the phone. His laptop was right there. his notebooks, his work bag, the project he had just completed, all proof that he had been trying. But Alex looked at them and felt nothing. He sat in the middle of the room, surrounded by everything he had worked for. And for the first time, the thought became clear, not loud, not dramatic, just simple. I have nothing. Alex put the phone down. Then he walked toward an old drawer. He wasn't looking for anything specific. He just needed something different. Inside, he found an old phone and an old notebook, things he had forgotten existed. He held the phone in his hands. It was slow, worn out, almost useless now. But Alex remembered a time when this phone had felt new. He opened the old photos, and there he was, a younger Alex, living in a smaller place, with less, much less. But the younger Alex was smiling, not because his life was perfect. He was happy about something small, something that would probably seem insignificant now. And yet, back then, it meant everything. Alex looked at the picture again, then at the room around him. The younger version of him had wanted so little, and somehow wanted it so badly. Alex looked around. The comfortable apartment, the laptop, the books, the things he had worked for, the life he had once imagined, was standing right in front of him. There was something almost uncomfortable about it. The younger Alex had dreamed about becoming the person he was now, and the person he was now couldn't stop thinking about becoming someone else. Alex looked down at the photograph. He didn't suddenly feel grateful. He didn't suddenly feel happy. He just realized something that was difficult to ignore. Maybe the problem wasn't that Alex had nothing. Maybe he had simply become so focused on everything he didn't have that he had stopped seeing what he did. The next morning, Alex looked at the old photograph again, then at his phone, the past, the present, and the thing that kept showing him everyone else's life. He sat there for a moment, then got up. He made his coffee, got dressed, and started his morning. The same apartment, the same routine, the same life. Nothing had magically changed. On the way to work, Alex noticed things he usually missed. The morning light, the people opening their shops, the city slowly waking up. Nothing extraordinary, but he was there for it. At work, he finished another ordinary task, and for a moment, he didn't immediately ask what came next. He just looked at the thing he had finished. During his break, Alex picked up his phone, because of course he did. He hadn't suddenly escaped the internet. He was still the same person. And there it was again. Someone else's success, someone else's life, someone else's moment. Alex felt the familiar pressure begin to rise. For a second, he almost let it take him. That feeling, that comparison, that quiet voice saying, "You should be somewhere else by now." Alex looked at the phone, then at his own desk. Someone else's achievement on one side, his unfinished work on the other. He didn't delete the app. He didn't throw away his phone. He didn't make some dramatic promise to change his entire life. He simply put the phone down and returned to the thing in front of him. That night, Alex worked on his project again. It was still small, still unfinished, still nowhere near the life he imagined. But he kept going. Not because he had finally won, just because it was his. After a while, Alex stopped and looked around. The room was ordinary. The furniture was ordinary. The life was ordinary. But he remembered something. This was once the life he was trying to reach. On the desk were three things: his old phone, his old photograph, and his current phone. Three different versions of his life. And somehow, the newest one was the one he appreciated the least. On the desk were three things. Alex returned to his laptop. The project was still incomplete. His future was still uncertain. He still wanted more. Of course he did. Wanting more was never the problem. Maybe the problem was believing that wanting more meant what you already had was worth nothing. So Alex kept working. Not faster, not desperately, just steadily. Later that night, Alex stood by the window. The city outside continued moving. People were building businesses, buying houses, traveling, winning, losing, living lives he would never fully see. And for a moment, Alex still felt the urge to look, to compare, to wonder if he was behind. Then he looked back at his own apartment, his desk, his books, his unfinished project, his life. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't extraordinary, but it was real. And maybe that was the part he had forgotten. Alex didn't have nothing. He had simply spent so much time looking at everyone else's lives that he had stopped looking at his own. Because sometimes the more you see, the less you feel you have.